This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and here's one you've been waiting for. This is the 2015 Dell XPS 15 Infinity model with the Infinity display, edge-to-edge display, in other words, model number 9550 for those of you who are wondering. Now, this starts down at $999, and for that you get a configuration that is not very XPS-like. We'll talk about all that. And we have the top-of-the-line model here with a quad-core i7 Skylake CPU, a 4K UHD touchscreen with 100% Adobe RGB color gamut. Talk about color saturation. We'll get into that too. And it is about the size of a 14-inch laptop, even though it's a 15.6-inch laptop, something Dell is very proud of. Like the XPS 13 with the Infinity display that we reviewed in January of 2015, they've done the same thing to the XPS 15, something folks have been waiting for. And it really is currently the most compact 15-inch laptop on the market. And it weighs 4.5 pounds, so relatively speaking, it's also very light, yet it's very powerful. Things like NVIDIA GTX 960M graphics inside, USB-C/Thunderbolt 3, all the modern amenities. We're going to look at it now. So here it is, the Dell XPS 15 Infinity model, 2015, late 2015. Major redesign for the XPS 15 that mirrors what we saw in the XPS 13, and that's a good thing, including, well, the crazy skinny bezels here, the edge-to-edge display going on, a lot smaller, a lot thinner. Gone is carbon fiber on the bottom, something Dell once did. We still have carbon fiber here, still looks neat, still feels pleasant as well. And smaller than competing 15.6-inch laptops. No surprise there, because the XPS 13 was the smallest 13-inch laptop we'd ever seen. This is very compact too, and we'll compare it to a couple of laptops later on so you can see the size difference. Dell claims it's more like the size of a 14-inch. Of course, it's going to depend on which laptops you're actually looking at, but it is certainly smaller than the 15-inch laptops we have in-house. Price starts at $999 for a very un-XPS-like configuration. What I mean is that the XPS is usually kind of the high line for Dell, so outfitting it with the most minimum stuff you can possibly get doesn't always really make sense, and I think it's there just so Dell can say, look, it starts at $999. Then that base model has just Intel HD 530 integrated graphics. All other configurations have switchable graphics. They have HD 530 graphics and NVIDIA GTX 960M graphics with 2 GB of DDR4 VRAM. So this is a capable gamer as well. That base model has a Core i3. If you move up from the $999 just to $1199, you get a quad-core i5. So while most Ultrabooks have dual-core CPUs, we're looking at full quad-core 45-watt CPUs here. That means this is a more powerful machine for those of you who do more heavy lifting. And the meat of the line really is the quad-core i7. All of these are Skylake CPUs, and we're looking at a Core i7 right here. If you do things like CAD, seriously, I don't mean starting out in school, you probably don't need really a whole lot of horsepower yet there, but if you're doing it actually professionally, if you're doing video production, if you're seriously into Lightroom and Photoshop in a professional sort of way where you do a day in, day out, lots of big image files, cataloging, and that sort of thing. I mean, a regular Ultrabook is fine for Photoshop, but I mean, if you just live, eat, and breathe it, this is your sort of machine. If you want to play games, I mean, today's modern demanding games, this would be your machine. It is overkill if you only need to do the web and Office, that sort of thing, or your average everyday photo editing and occasional video editing. Inside, you can get it with either 8 or 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM. They didn't try to get away with DDR3 here, which is a nice thing. And most configurations have an SSD drive. It's an M2 SSD, PCIe interface. Some use the NVMe interface, as does ours. You can get it with 256, 512, or ours has a whopping 1 terabyte, which is awesomely sweet. And there's another configuration. That base model, you can get it with a 500 gig hard drive, good old-fashioned mechanical spinning hard drive. Now that necessitates some changes inside, so there are 2 different battery capacities as a result. The battery on this and on any configuration with an SSD is a 84 watt-hour bigger battery. The one with the hard drive is a smaller 56 watt-hour battery to make room basically for the hard drive caddy that goes over here, otherwise the battery is too big for it. So you could get it with a hard drive inside and you could use the hard drive bay, but that would necessitate having the smaller battery. We'll talk about battery life and what that means in a while. It's an attractive looking machine, at least if you thought the XPS 13 was. It has a kind of all-American Dell look to it with the carbon fiber here, and on The lid, we have aluminum. If you get the 4K UHD gloss touchscreen that we have here, you get Gorilla Glass NBT over the top too. So your usual silvery aluminum Dell looking kind of lid here, quite slim, especially for a very powerful 15-inch laptop. And the bottom is also aluminum, and this is removable. Bunch of Torx T5 screws around here, and then underneath the service tag plate, don't forget to remove 2 Phillips head screws. In addition, then you can take the bottom plate off, and we'll splice in a photo of the internals in a minute where you're going to see RAM, RAM, fan, fan. Big battery over here, socketed wireless card. So 2 RAM slots. In theory, you could go up to 32 gigs of RAM if you got those intelligent memory 16 gig SO-DIMM modules that we reviewed not too long ago. Otherwise, 8 gig DIMMs are currently the largest on the market. I think for most people, 16 gigs of memory is going to be just fine though. There's ventilation going on here. There's some ventilation along the edge over here. These are the speakers, and you'll hear them. These, they're loud, but boy, are they tinny. They're really blech. And it has Dell's usual SoundMax audio enhancements, and this is the usual Realtek hardware inside. And without it, they sound even tinnier, so I leave that on. But I took it off to the default, which is kind of like over-compressed, very bassy stuff, and put on music. It sounds a little bit better, so plenty of volume, not real pleasing audio quality there. Build overall is gorgeous. Let's take a look at the ports for a minute, because this is a cause of much excitement and consternation. You got your little teeny charging connector right here. I'll show you the charger in a bit. USB 3.0 port and HDMI port. This is HDMI 1.4, not 2.0. Ruh-oh, number one, because Dell got rid of the mini display port. Now, a lot of you probably have really nice Dell XPS 4K displays or some other brand of 4K display. HDMI 1.4 will support that, but it won't support it at 60 hertz. You're going to have to drive them at 30 hertz, which means in watching video, you might see motion doesn't look really smooth. You'll see your cursor kind of looking like it's ghosting across the screen. So why couldn't Dell use a 2.0 port here? Really, why? Especially because we're in transition mode with this USB-C/Thunderbolt 3 port. Let me tell you, finding adapters and connectors for this is still not easy. Even though the 12-inch MacBook came out in the spring and used that connector, it's only connector, so you think there'd be a whole lot of stuff on the market. And there is USB-C to Ethernet, for example. Dell's going to have a Thunderbolt dock that will add HDMI, hopefully 2.0. It sounds like it will be, plus Ethernet on it, and that's going to be $79. Not available yet, though. So anyway, I have been trying every adapter on the market with this just to try to use a 4K display at 60 hertz, and so far, no luck with a supposed USB-C to HDMI 2.0 adapter. I'm still seeing 30 hertz, not 60. Don't know why. And I am awaiting delivery of a USB-C to DisplayPort, which might be the holy grail for those of you who are looking for that sort of thing. So the Dell XPS used to be something that was really easy to hook up to multiple monitors and really high resolution monitors. Until we start seeing more adapters and connectors and stuff like that, it's going to be challenging here to do that and to get the refresh rates you might like. Your usual headphone mic combo jack right there. And on this side, SD card side, it sticks out just a little bit, about a quarter of the way. So it doesn't stick out a lot, but it does stick out a little bit. Another USB 3.0 port, and there's our little battery status button right over here, and your lock slot. So standard Dell stuff, but slightly minimal on the ports. Again, I think a lot of people are going to be relying on dongles, adapters, and that Thunderbolt dock from Dell when it is available. Now, it's Thunderbolt 3, remember, not Thunderbolt 2. So Thunderbolt 2 stuff is a little bit easier to find right now. And here is Dell's usual stylish charger. This is a 130 watt power adapter. Same unusual look that they always have going on over there. So it's pretty compact, fairly light. For a laptop with this much power inside, it's a fairly portable adapter. No USB charging ports on board here. It is just a charger. Dell's also going to make external battery packs because USB-C and Thunderbolts accepts actual power in instead of just, the usual stuff going out. So that's an interesting proposition there. And for a size comparison, now this looks a little bit bigger because it's closer to the camera right now, but this is the Asus ZenBook UX501 Pro, also a 15.6-inch quad-core slim and light laptop with, well, the same 960M dedicated graphics, though this has older generation Intel CPU inside until Asus refreshes it. This guy sells for around $1,500. So here's the size difference as we put them right on top of each other. And again, the Asus is actually already a fairly compact MacBook Pro sized laptop, so you get the idea of the size savings, and also the Asus is a little bit thicker too, so that's pretty impressive. The Asus is also a little bit heavier. And here we have it next to the Microsoft Surface Book, which is a 13.5-inch convertible. It goes in two pieces. That's a tablet right there that actually detaches, but given the 3:2 aspect ratio of this display, it has a footprint more like a 14-inch laptop. So you can see what they look like side by side there. The Dell is not hugely bigger, actually, which is pretty interesting. And of course, well, if you close them, the Dell closes like a normal laptop versus the Surface that has a little gap inside from the side. So the Surface at the back is going to be a little bit deeper. At the front, it's thinner. For those of you who need a little refreshment on what that looks like. And if we put them on top of each other, the Surface as a footprint when closed, though, is still, the Surface Book is still significantly smaller there. So you get the idea. And yes, we'll have a smackdown between these two, have no fear. Let's talk about the display. Again, this is the 4K UHD model. That's a resolution of 3840 by 2160. I'm running it at 200% scaling right now, which is a nice even ratio of 4:1. So you get pleasing scaling here. There's also a 1080p matte version, and we will cover that one separately. It should offer a little bit better battery life, no glare, because it's matte and non-touch, not unlike what we saw with the XPS 13. Only in this case, I don't think this one's killing the battery life quite as much as the 4K display did on the XPS 13 for the last generation. It's an amazing display. It is thoroughly gorgeous. This is a sharp IGZO panel, and those are evolving very quickly. They're capable of looking very bright without using as much power as a lot of other display technologies. The bad point is that the white point, now it's a little hard to tell in a fairly warm photograph like this, is extremely high, 8,500 degrees Kelvin, and that is baked into the laptop. You can't change the white point on a laptop, so the whites can be very harsh. I actually find sometimes reading on this for extended periods of time to be tiring, and I set the brightness considerably lower than I would other laptops. So now that that negative is out of the way, it is an amazing panel. This has 100% not just sRGB, but Adobe RGB. In fact, NTSC coverage is very high. Now, we don't usually bother showing graphs of NTSC because laptops don't come close to covering NTSC, which is what your TVs use. Your TVs actually have a very wide color gamut. That's 95% of NTSC. It's really stupendous stuff here. So lots of color saturation. The challenge here is that it's almost better than real life. It can be misleading. If you're doing photos for the web, for example, you're going to see everything with eye-popping color, almost sort of like somebody turned on the HDR feature. It'll be misleading as to how color saturated it looks. So you might actually want to, even if you switch to the sRGB color profile here, it's still going to look better than life. You might actually want an external monitor that's just normal sRGB to see things as they really are. To me, the color saturation looks even a little bit exaggerated, and I've looked at other 100% Adobe RGB laptop, tablet, and monitor displays before. It's pretty darn amazing. If you love Super AMOLED displays on smartphones, you're going to love this thing. Viewing angles are good. I know some of you have been worrying about color shifts, and well, we're going to pick up some glare here, but I am not seeing any weird color shifts on this at all. It's perfectly fine, and this does have the Dell software on here for calibration. This is calibrated from the factory, and I kind of actually like Dell's utility. Their Premier Color, which they also use with some of their higher-end external monitors, so we have the basic view right here. We can switch to advanced, and you can see everything you can change here. Now, even though it says it's set to 6,500 degrees, don't be fooled. We measured this with our colorimeter, and it is rocking at 8,500 degrees for the white point. So if you drop it down to 5,000, you're actually getting something that's a little bit less ice-searingly cold white. Anyway, it's handy because you can switch to photo RGB, Adobe RGB, which is pretty accurate for those of you who are doing print rendering and stuff for cinema and all that sort of thing. We do actually have the cinema profile here. Vibrant, which is the default, which is really cool, blastingly white kind of stuff. And sRGB too. Now, if we switch to sRGB, you can see things get a little bit dimmer too. And it's still really pretty saturated, though, to be honest. It doesn't seem to have as much of an effect as I would have expected. Anyway, it's a handy utility to have. You can, of course, use your own calibration software and hardware if you wish. It's stunning looking stuff. 350 nits of brightness is what Dell claims. We measured at 313. That's after calibration. Sometimes calibration will actually bring brightness down a little bit, especially if you have a lot of luminance coming from those cool whites. That's still quite good. Experientially, a Surface Book doesn't feel as bright. It's a funny thing because its white point is actually where it should be, close to 6,500 degrees Kelvin. So I tend to run the Dell at a much lower brightness setting, even though the Surface Book is over 400 nits of brightness. It's significantly actually brighter than this Dell. Anyway, it's the new wave of Adobe RGB displays in 4K resolution. They're here and they are rocking a whole lot of deep, rich color. As ever with the XPS 15 line, one thing hasn't changed. This is a laptop, just a laptop. These two pieces do not come apart. This does not have an active digitizer for an N-Trig or a Wacom or a Synaptics pen. You can use a capacitive stylus with it, no palm rejection, not precise. If you're looking really for serious kind of pen and note-taking use or drawing, this would not be your laptop, besides the fact that reaching over the screen to draw and write is just not ergonomically a jolly thing to do. Turning it sideways, this is as far back as the display tips, which is fine. It's not, insane. It doesn't go boom against the table there, but I think for most people this is perfectly adequate, especially because the viewing angles are so good. It's not like you have to really fidget with it. The keyboard is backlit, as you would expect from an IPS. It has an ambient light sensor, so it can turn on and off. The backlight's kind of shy. Like, if you don't hit the keys for a couple of seconds, it'll turn off. You have to hit a key again or move the mouse. I wish it would stay on longer. I mean, this does not use a lot of power, so thanks, Dell. Why did you do that? Trackpad. Trackpad's a dream. It's almost as good as Surface Books, and Surface Books is about as good as a Max, which says a lot. This one needs a little bit more cursor acceleration. I did tweak the settings, and it's funny, in the modern settings, the Windows 10 settings, changing things really didn't have much of an effect. I had to go to the old-fashioned mouse control panel to actually have them make a difference. Anyway, it's just about at the point where you can think with your finger and move it around, and get it exactly where you want pretty precisely. The two-finger scrolling works. Takes a little bit more pressure than Surface Book or the Mac, but it works. It's really nice. It's better than the XPS 13, the first edition that came out in early 2015. We'll be reviewing the refresh model with Skylake inside soon, and of course I'm sure it's going to have the updated trackpad and stuff, so it's good. The keyboard, I generally love XPS keyboards, but as they make these thinner and thinner, the key travel keeps going down and down. 1.3 millimeters. 1.6 would be the industry average for a laptop. Skinny ones have less. Surface Book goes down a little bit. We're talking between Surface Book and Surface Pro around 1.4, 1.5 millimeters of key travel. This guy here at 1.3 feels very shallow. It's not noisy. I can type on it quickly, but the keystrokes are a bit abrupt. You hit because it is short travel, boom. You might double type letters until you get used to it. It is something you can adapt to. It's not as dreamy as some of the old XPS ones that had deeper keyboards or a ThinkPad, but it's not bad. And sorry, obviously there's no number pad here. There is space on either side. I suppose they could have crammed things in, but pretty much they went with the same layout as the XPS 13, so no number pad for you. You've got the arrow keys embedded with page up, page down, enabled by an FN key right there, and multimedia keys up top that by default do control your brightness and your volume and all that sort of stuff. So you'll hit the FN key if you'd rather have it be F5, F4 that you're going after. So nice keyboard, pleasant keyboard. It's something I think most of us could adapt to in terms of key travel, but at first it's going to seem a little bit abrupt. So what else is inside? We have dual band Wi-Fi 802.11a. It's a Broadcom module, for those of you who are wondering, because Dell just says it's a Dell module. I like Broadcom wireless products. Sometimes Intel has been a little bit, buggy, and this has been pretty rock solid and pretty fast. The only thing I've noticed, we have two access points in our office, and it doesn't really even though it knows about them both, it's memorized them both, it doesn't like to switch between them. I usually have to tell it, yo, switch to the other one, your signal's getting low. Bluetooth 4.1 is standard in this as well. As noted, and as usual for an XPS 15, this is pretty much mobile workstation class of horsepower inside. You've got quad-core CPUs, quad-core i5s, quad-core i7s. I think probably most people go for the quad-core i7. For around $16.99, you can get this nicely configured with that Core i7-67HQ, that's Skylake processor, 2.6 gigahertz for the base clock speeds, a 45-watt CPU. as is the Core i5 quad core used in this too. So this is a different power class than usual Ultrabook with 15-watt CPUs. This is a powerful, powerful beast. NVIDIA GTX 960M graphics is standard, like I said, with all but the very base model and switchable with Intel HD 530 graphics. Let's talk about Intel graphics for a minute. For those of you who watched our Surface Pro 4 and Surface Book reviews recently using Intel HD 500 series graphics, you know that Intel's drivers are a little bit wacky right now. Things like funny color shifts when you're scrolling in Microsoft Edge web browser, occasional display graphics driver crashes, and Intel is working on fixing that for all manufacturers, including Dell. Dell's already had one graphics update for that, and it's helped a lot. I've seen fewer anomalies, shall we say, but if you see that happen, it's not Dell's fault, it's Intel's fault, and they are working on fixing the drivers. You don't have defective hardware. If you want to go up to the 4K display, that's the big expense here. This gorgeous 4K display with these over-the-top colors is going to add $500 to the price tag. So if you like this machine and you like the way we have it configured, you're looking at closer to $2,000. Performance will be the same, obviously, if you get the 1080p model in terms of horsepower, graphics, and all that. And you can see our 3D Mark score right here for Ice Storm Unlimited, 117,918. This has faster graphics than Surface Book, no kidding. 960 is bigger than the 940-ish number that's used in the Surface Book. This is, when you hit the 960, you're getting into, this is where I really like to be when gaming. You can start to play today's most demanding games on medium and sometimes even high settings. It's sweet. So definitely, if you like gaming, you're going to like it. Better yet, thermal throttling. It used to be the bane of the XPS's existence a few years ago. Dell did address that. Not happening here. Nope, it does not throttle. And it will actually let the CPU and the GPU get pretty hot. When we ran the Unigine Heaven graphics benchmark test, which is a real burner of a test, it let the CPU go up to the mid-70s. I mean, it didn't need to go any higher, but that's pushing the thermal envelope there, mid-70s centigrade when 100 is the cap. And the GPU hit about 82 degrees or so. Now, the bottom here did not get wickedly hot, which is really nice. In fact, it didn't even get hot. When playing games and stuff like that, you'll hear the fan. It never gets very loud, though. It's nicely tuned, the two fans that are in here. And testing with the thermal gun, it never exceeded human body temperature, which means that's why didn't feel hot. It's about 95, 96 degrees when I was playing Battlefield 4. So the tests we ran are with the 4K display, 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, that's 2133 megahertz RAM, and the 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, this Intel Sunrise Point HM170 chipset. So PC Mark 8 is scored 3091 for the home accelerated test. Computed Pi in 12 seconds even using W prime as a test. For Unigine Heaven, at 1080p testing on high settings, tessellation off, 42.7 frames per second. That's very good, which gives it a score of 1076 for those of you who followed the test. For 3D Mark 11 in performance mode, 5538, in the extreme mode, 1813. For Cinebench R15, the OpenGL test, it managed 46.25 frames. That's a very good score. And the CPU scored 677. For 3D Mark CloudGate, 16,566. For 3D Mark Firestrike, 3,968. Numbers not unlike other recent Core i7 quad cores with the same graphics inside, say the ZenBook UX501 or the HP Omen 15. And for those of you who are wondering about the speed of the 1 terabyte NVMe SSD in here, you can see quite high, including the right numbers. Very nice, and well, we're happy to see that. So we're going to show you how that translates into all this horsepower into some fine gaming with a little Battlefield 4 play. And you'll hear the speakers as well, for better or worse when it comes to the speakers. One last thing I want to note, that this does not support Windows Hello. It does not have a fingerprint scanner. Windows Hello requires a high-resolution front camera. This has the usual 720p webcam, and it is a chin cam, as we call it with Dell products, because this near bezel-less design, there's no room for them to put the webcam up top like they usually do, so it's down here, and it'll show your chin in great detail. Well, you have to look down at the camera a little bit. So now we're in Battlefield 4. We have Fraps running in the corner right here, so you can see the frame rate, and we're running it at full screen, 1920 by 1080, 60 hertz, and we have quality set to high. And you know, the game is actually going to have better audio than most other things. I think that really the software is optimized for games here. The software that is made by Dell, that is. Nice. I mean, this display is so nice for gaming. Frame rate is staying in, obviously, the mid to upper 50s here, as I'm about to get nailed. Spacebar works fine on this. I know some people were talking about having problems with their spacebars. No problems here. Certainly an important thing for games. So it plays really well. So that's Battlefield 4, which is a pretty demanding game, playing nicely on this. And the fan, you can hear it right now. I'm pretty close to the computer, so you should be able to hear it. It's going to be audible with just about anything other than maybe a 17-inch gaming laptop that's super thick. But it's not desperate sounding. It's not wheezing, anything like that. And let's switch over to a temperature monitor so we can actually see where our temperatures are. We still have Battlefield running in the background. And our cores are at the low 60s for the most part right there. And the GPU is right now at 72 degrees. It hit a high of 74. It's actually coming down a little bit. So temperatures are also very, very acceptable here, and I'm not seeing any thermal throttling. So good performance from the XPS 15. It's a gamer. It's a pro apps machine. It's a productivity machine. It's kind of like everything all wrapped up into one. Dell did a really good job here. All right, guys and gals, let's talk battery life. By the way, the little charger lights up over here. Isn't that nice when you plug it in? That's a Dell thing, too. Dell makes some pretty bizarre claims here. And Dell has told me, their PR folks that I work with, that you have to put this through several charge-discharge cycles to see the best battery life out of this. So we've had it through 3 charge cycles right now. Battery life's pretty good, so it takes a while actually to kind of kill it unless you're running automated tests just designed to kill it. I really don't believe in automated battery tests so much. They're artificial, they're not real world use. So we tend to actually do things with the laptops to try to make it more representative of what you do with the machine. So they claim up to 17 hours. I'm sure with the full HD, the lower resolution model, because that would consume less power, and with the larger battery inside, the 84-watt battery. The one with the hard drive is available with a 56 watt-hour battery, a smaller battery. So anyway, we're going to focus pretty much on the bigger battery here. And we'll talk about the 4K because that's what we have. We're still waiting for our 1080p model to come in. Again, we're going to cover that. We'll add that to our full RIN review. We'll probably shoot a video for that as well. The display is really bright. So it's easy to run this, and I like bright displays. I like to keep it kind of cranked up. Honestly, I keep this about 2 notches from the lowest level when I'm working at night in my living room. I mean, it is so bright. That helps some with battery life. Running tests at 40% battery, we usually do, 40% brightness. We usually do 40 or 50% depending on the display. 50% can be punishing if you're not in a bright room with this. So we ran it at 40%, doing a mix of productivity work. That means MS Office, email, websites, Photoshop editing, working with 10 raw images from a digital SLR using Photoshop CC on this, streaming an hour episode of video on Netflix. It's averaging, again, with the big battery in here and the 4K display, about 6 hours of battery life, which, given how powerful this is not that bad for a quad core with switchable dedicated graphics. Now, most of the time it was actually using Intel HD 530 graphics, except when we were in Photoshop, then it will use the dedicated GPU, and that's a good thing, helps speed things up. Anyway, I cannot imagine getting 10 hours out of this. It would be, maybe if you use the most draconian power settings on this, round the brightness extremely low, which you really could do, and we'll bring it down even with studio lights, which makes it pretty hard. Okay, not off. Yeah. You can get it pretty dark there, but you don't want to go all the way and go crazy. So I think 20% brightness is about as low as you can go on it. I still don't see how you could get 10 hours out of the 4K UHD model, but Dell does make their claims. I think they claim 9 hours, actually. So to me, this is a 6.5 hour laptop. If you're doing anything more demanding, if you're doing Adobe Premiere, then you're going to have shorter run times. If you're just doing Word, you're going to have longer run times. And we'll wait and see how long that Full HD model runs for. So that's the Dell XPS 15 Infinity Edition. Again, we're also going to look at the Full HD 1080p matte non-touch model separately to see how that goes in terms of battery life, for example, and the screen quality on that. But for this 4K edition that we're looking at right here, I mean, you could say this is a supercomputer in a sheep's clothing. It's so small, it's so svelte, it's so light. It's a very impressive piece of hardware. And I hope that Apple comes up with something to answer in their 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro when they do a revision of that, which is certainly long overdue. And given the price tag, it's very fair for what you get. I mean, it is superbly powerful. It's not as nifty as the Microsoft Surface Book. You can't take it apart and turn it into a tablet. It doesn't have a pen, all that sort of stuff. So different kind of animal, traditional laptop here with the touchscreen, but we will have a smackdown with the Surface Book as well. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Don't forget to hit that like button.